Imagine a world where the police don't need a warrant to follow you home, to watch you shop, or to track your every movement. You don't actually have to imagine it, it's already here. It's the Urban Sentinel, and let's get into it. While you've been looking at your schedule, going about your day, the government has been looking through the eyes of private corporations at you. The Fourth Amendment was designed to keep the state out of your private life, but it never ever conceived or could account for this new era of safety as a service. And it's in a subscription model that many private corporations have now paid out to or loaned out to other law enforcement agencies. Today we're going to break down the new surveillance state, the infrastructure itself of observation. This modern surveillance state isn't just government agencies. It's a multi-billion-dollar middleman, and it's an industry that continues to grow. And this is how they do it. One candidate, Flock Safety. Its primary driver, they don't just sell cameras, they sell a unified surveillance network. Because it's private, the data collected by those cameras into that network system can be accessed by multiple law enforcement agencies and is searchable from any town 2,000 miles away or beyond, without a warrant, without any need to notify, because those parties are contracting with the Flock camera systems. They don't have to get your permission to observe information that was collected by those systems. There's a retail police nexus, as it were, that you see a lot. You may notice it a lot more, especially after watching this video. A lot of big box retailers, whether it be Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, you'll start to notice that a lot of them have these mobile camera trailers in their parking lots, or you start to observe that there are more cameras in the shopping plazas that may be owned by a private company, pointing in all different directions. They create a real-time nexus of information. It's not just simply a camera for a human to observe. In fact, many cases, there's not a person immediately watching the screens. The cameras record vehicles, they record biometrics of people, they can notate color, size, shape, the pace and speed that you move at. They also interlink with many of those stores' internal security cameras when they share the same software or have access to the same system. So, as a perfect example, a person pulls up in a car, walks into a store, goes into that store, shoplifts, and then exits. The store security may not have immediately been able to stop them, but by checking the cameras, they have all the evidence there, and it links with the outside cameras. So now it can pair and partner up, scanning all the cameras, all the footage from the time that person pulled in, shoplifted, and left, and then track it in different directions depending upon where it goes. And with this, you have to understand the scale of what's going on. The Flock Safety system is an automated license plate reader system. You may have seen some of those. They tend to look not too obvious because they tend to blend to the background. They usually are a dark brown or black pole that stands about 10 to 12 feet high with a small brown unit and a solar panel on top. In many cases, law enforcement or towns approve to basically rent those, lease those. They set them up in high traffic areas, they set them up in intersections where there tend to be accidents, but they also set them up in areas where there may be higher levels of crime, because those cameras, while they are designed specifically to read license plates, they also read vehicles. They can distinguish colors, they can distinguish certain physical features on a vehicle, a dent, a scratch, bumper sticker, decals, that sort of thing, and that adds to the profile that it goes through in its database. Motorola Solutions, they have several systems they offer through the Vigilant and the Vesta systems, which is maintaining a massive nationwide license plate database, but they also have systems connected with body cameras and in-car cameras, as well as offering services with drones and UAVs for that customer or clientele that are willing to pay that kind of money for that level of security. Now, there's a company, Axon Enterprises. They have a large cloud hub storage that basically aggregates all types of body cam footage and integrates it into a third-party database that it's not just simply domestic. They have contracts with companies in Germany, over in the UK, Australia, several different other places, as well as other individual corporations and commercial enterprises where they can pool all that information together. And once again, when you're paying for that service, you have access to that information. So you are able to scour through that database, not simply for the things that you're looking for that pertain to you specifically as that company or as that individual country, but all the information within that database. Now, when it comes to hardware versus software, back in the old days, a security camera was plugged in, powered up, connected to a TV, the TV and the monitoring system to a VCR or to a DVD player, and that was it. If you wanted to know what was going on, you either had to have a person sitting there watching it, or you had to stop the tape, stop the disc, rewind, take a look, and then see what you missed out on, whatever the action was. That's not needed anymore. Most of these cameras nowadays have internal memory systems that can effectively continue recording even while someone is reviewing information that was stored up on the drive. So there's no lag, no lost time. That one camera can remain active and record what's going on in real time while a person is actually sitting reviewing things that were going on 5 minutes before, 5 hours before, whatever it is, and then immediately get right back up and not lose any time. So that speeds up the process of human eye review. But one of the other things that the new hardware does is it's allowing them to integrate systems more seamlessly, so it can connect through adapters and routers multiple cameras that may have already been in existence in different locations, forming it into a panopticon, as it were, of surveillance both inside and outside. And with the new software, you can set parameters. You can actually put in a license plate to look for. You can put in vehicle descriptions to look for. You can put in, depending upon the service, human attributes to look for. You can basically keyhole a certain size person or look for a certain color shade of clothing, a white t-shirt, dark blue pants. And the camera systems will not only review everything that's in that database to pull up those highlighted things, but it will actively look for other things that match it and bring you up an aggregate list of best percentage hits. Now, it would still be incumbent upon the human observer to look at it and go, not that one, not that one, that's a possible, but it speeds up the process and puts a wider net to be thrown out and cast in a situation where you're looking for a particular person. Now, of course, the big question, how is this legal? It's called third-party doctrine. Now, there was a case, Smith versus Maryland, and the courts had argued that you have no reasonable expectation of privacy when you are, one, out in public, which stands true. You can't expect an absolute level of privacy when you're out in public. When you're in a location or a venue that, although it may seem private and it may be privately owned, again, if it is open to the public, no expectation of privacy. And there is limited responsibility of notification from one private entity to another private entity, meaning you could walk into a mall. The mall is open to the public, but it's privately owned. That mall may have a contract with a security company that provides the cameras and surveillance. They may have to do nothing other than put a small sticker up on the corner of a door that says property under surveillance. They're not obligated to tell you what they do with that surveillance, who's watching it, and how that information is being used. So you have no reasonable expectation of privacy to remain anonymous in that environment. If you look at many of the cameras that are out and many of the scenarios that are out there, a lot of them are fixed position. They look and they point in one direction, but most are now PTZ, pan, tilt, zoom. So they're usually, you might notice them, a small half globe type of camera. They can spin around 270, 360 degrees. They can zoom out, they can look down, they can look over. Many of those are controlled by a person, but a lot of the software and the hardware allows them to be autonomous. You can set observational zones. So you, as the security personnel, can look at an image of an area where the camera sees, and you can knock off or mark off areas that you want the camera to focus on. You can set a boundary perimeter that when something comes into a specific field of view, the camera then tracks whatever that is, wherever it's going, and other cameras coordinate. So it's no longer a case of, oh, you see that one camera there, that's the only one there. There might be another camera at a different angle, 200, 300 feet away, that's watching you from a different position. There might be a camera inside that, although it's inside, has a clearer view outside and again is observing the area. Now, many of these cameras, traffic cameras, speed cameras, they are to one extent exactly what they are. The traffic cams that are set up at intersections and near certain streets are usually there to monitor the buildup of that AM traffic and that evening traffic, or an area where there still tends to be, even though there's clear signage and markings, accidents that then tend to block things up. That's really what those traffic cameras are for. But again, the software that is enabled in them, they can be utilized for much more. Speed cameras, the same thing. Most of the speed cameras are plain and simple. The sensor, usually a laser or radar, detects the object and the speed. It's recording, snaps probably 1,000 high-speed photographs as the vehicle approaches and passes, and usually at that point it will capture the driver, any front seat occupant, and a front plate or a decent enough vehicle description that they can look for that. But again, taking it from the SHTF scenario, and you think about in a more authoritarian situation, those very same cameras and the addition of other cameras can create choke points. So if they want to either restrict travel or they want to observe who's going in and coming out of certain areas, whether it's a high travel area or it's an area that people are supposed to stay inside, stay locked down, those cameras are able to spot things long before you spot the camera. They're able to pick up the movement. Many of these cameras have microphones on them. They're not specifically designed to listen to you talk to your buddy about what you're going to do this weekend, but they're more designed for the purpose of hearing certain sounds in frequencies such as automobiles, cars, trucks, vehicles, what have you, gunshots, those type of sounds that are unique and distinct, and they may not necessarily be right by the camera. But when you have 5, 6, 7 cameras all on the same network, and you program it to listen to a certain frequency range of sounds, they can coordinate as it is and triangulate and figure out where that was coming from. And then they can pull the footage from the closest available cameras in those areas that could possibly see and make a determination. Was that a car backfiring? Was that someone shooting? Which direction did they run to or drive off to, or what was going on in that area, and start pulling up other cameras. And with that, as I had mentioned, in a more authoritarian scenario, even straight up martial law, that enables them, when you have limited manpower, where you don't have physically enough boots on the ground to lock down and block down an area, those cameras become your first indicators, your first warnings. The sensors can be set to pan an entire street, and if people literally cross that dividing line on a street, the sensors go off and alerts send up, and the cameras pick up who's moving where. You might be innocently walking your dog just around the block and you're crossing over to the other side of the street, but you've crossed that invisible buffer zone. Now they're coming down to patrol to make sure that you're not trying to leave your neighborhood. You can look at it as a matter of red zones and green zones in that situation. In addition to the combination that you get that we all are aware of, where you have home camera systems, let's say, for example, through Amazon, Blink and Ring. Those cameras, even though you own the camera and you can opt out of paying for the subscription service, if your camera is connected and you're using it to your internet connection so you can monitor your home security on your phone, it's still in the Amazon cloud system. They still have access to it and they still retain the rights to that. So if a government agency says we need to see this footage, yes, a local police officer might be able to come up, knock on the door and say, hey, can you help me out? There was a shooting and a stolen car, and we tracked it down this way. We know you have a doorbell camera. Can we see the footage to see if anything's up there? Now, if you're legitimately not paying for the service, but you just have the camera active for your local purpose, you can go, look, it's not recording anything, or it doesn't save that information because I'm not paying for the service. They go, okay, fine. They can go to Amazon. Amazon can pull your information, even though you don't have it stored. They can pull your information off of their cloud service and then hand it to law enforcement. And that level of, shall we say, bypassing the need for a warrant in many cases, because yes, your camera that you paid for is your property. It's on your property. The actual information is not seen as your property. It's seen as property of that company, of Amazon. So Amazon itself is the deciding factor on whether or not law enforcement gets to view that information. And we won't even immediately get into some of the devices that are out there currently and have been out for a while that even allow law enforcement on some occasions to bypass that entirely, depending upon what they are doing and where they're at. Now, going back to the automated license plate reader, which is one of the key focuses of this video, there's a little side note to it. Those systems rely on reflective surfaces. They have infrared cameras or infrared illuminators around the camera lens that help brighten the area. So it basically shines the infrared light off of objects, and then it determines through the contrast of the light and the reflection what it's looking at, and then the software reads your plate. Several years ago, probably almost a good 10 years ago, my home state, Connecticut, decided randomly to, hey, let's switch up our license plate colors, which the colors beforehand were a dark, deep blue with white lettering. They switched them to a whitish blue, highly reflective background with blue lettering, stating that, oh, it's for safety if a vehicle's pulled off to the side of the road on the highway where there's no lights, which that's a lot of highway in Connecticut is like that. The reflective plate will make it easier for a vehicle coming up to see that vehicle because the light bouncing off of it. And this way you can avoid an accident that might happen inadvertently when someone isn't paying attention. Fine enough, well and good, but it also makes it much easier for plate readers to read a license plate at a distance or in passing, because again, if you see police with plate readers on, they're not specifically driving and looking down at a screen. They're just driving. The camera's doing the work for them. So if they're looking for a specific plate, whether it be a vehicle plate for be on the lookout, whether it be someone who hadn't paid taxes to the city and the city is, looking for their money, whether it be a private company that hires contractors to go out and repossess vehicles, the camera sees the images and runs those characters through a database, A to Z, 1 to 0, over and over and over again. So it's going to get a match within milliseconds of catching a brief glimpse of a plate and be able to pull that up and send an alert. And that's when the driver, the operator, will look over and go, yep, that's the vehicle. Police will hit their lights, pull a UE, and then come after the vehicle that they're looking for. That's how that operates. So it requires almost bare minimum human interaction to do its job. And within that database, that's where you can have additional information put in, whether it's just simply being a repossessed vehicle, whether it be delinquent taxes or expired registration, or whether it be a vehicle that is associated with someone who has a warrant for something else. So they're looking for that person with the warrant, but this vehicle might be a family member or friends, or it might be a vehicle from the last known address that they had. They can start looping and circling and rounding up and gathering all that information on people as a collective course as they go through the day. Now, there's a lot of information that is out there, and there's far too much to put into this one video, but a little fun thing you can do is you go to dflock.me.com, and you will see through that company's setup, it's a private company, and they literally have a database set up, and you put in your location, your state, or you just look at any location on there, and when you zoom in on the map, you'll start to see small circles and numbers pop up. And as you zoom in closer, those numbers, whether it's 3, 17, whatever it is, represent the total number of known DFLOC cameras in that area. Now, some of those cameras, when you click on them, will show you who actually owns it. So if, for example, it says Flock, that actual company owns that camera and it's placed there. Now, they might be leasing it to the town, or in some cases, you might see the town's police department as the owner, which means they bought the camera, they own the camera, but they're leasing the service. So this gives you an idea of who is watching and what they're looking at. Now, it will not give you the visual. It won't show you what the camera sees, but it does have a directional indicator, the field of view, as it were. You'll have a little blue icon for the camera and a little gray area of view showing you effectively where it's pointed. Now, if this is an area where you live or you go by often and you hadn't noticed it before, you can drive around, you can take a look, and you can see. And again, some things, perfect example, you might have 1 or 2 of those cameras set up on a highway on-ramp area where, coordinately speaking, there's a retail shop where they have a high level of shoplifting, hit and run activity. So it makes sense. Someone pulls into the parking lot, robs a store, gets into their vehicle, gets right onto the highway just across the street. The cameras are going to catch, if at the minimum, the action in the parking lot and then the vehicle getting onto the highway. You'll get a vehicle description, vehicle plate number, and that system can now activate and notify local law enforcement, state police, whoever it is, or at the minimum, it goes into the database, and then when the police go to search, they'll start getting highway traffic recordings of that vehicle as it moves along, because it can coordinate with the state monitoring systems as well. So they may not be a hot pursuit, but they will eventually track down the vehicle, getting its registration as far as where it's addressed at, bring up any other information, and then that narrows down the process of who it is and who they're looking for. Now, we'll try to leave a link for some of these companies, but mind you, some of the companies you can go to the website and just see what they offer. Others, you go to that site, you have to have an account to gain any more access to it. So it's a limited access site. You go there, it's going to ask you for your login identifier and your password, which of course you don't have unless you have an account, and it won't let you go beyond that. Others set up their general company website that will let you look at the services they offer, but then if you want to know more, again, you have to pay for the service and be having a profile within that system to gain any further access. So it's more of a case of you see who is out there providing these services, and it may give you an idea, because many of these cameras, if you're in a parking lot and you happen to see one of the mobile security cameras, which initially you don't really think much of it, but you've seen them before. It's usually a 4x5, 4x6 small box trailer, sometimes white, sometimes black. The company name will be on it, and they'll have a 12-foot aluminum pole with 1 or 2 cameras sitting out the top, usually solar panels either up by the cameras or down by that trailer base. And it's literally just brought in by a vehicle. It's got the trailer hitch on it and everything, and it sets up in a parking lot. So you might see that in a parking lot of a large big box chain store. You might notice 1 or 2 of them. They usually have either a flashing red or sometimes a flashing blue light, usually up on the top. It's recording everything that the cameras are picking up, and it's tied into the store's security, as well as in many cases the property owner security, because a lot of these real estate development companies, they are investing hundreds of millions of dollars, and their main profit driver is people coming to the stores that they're there shopping. If there's a lot of crime going on, if a lot of cars are getting stolen, a lot of people are getting robbed, fewer people are going to come there. It's less on the responsibility of the stores and more on the responsibility of the property owner to maintain a level of safety and security all around. So they will invest tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars to help this as both a deterrent, because once you know what it is, if you're a person who's of criminal mind, you may decide, I'm going to go someplace else. It's one thing to deal with an internal store security. It's another thing to deal with a security system that you realize is not just simply part of that store that you're trying to steal from, but it's part of the property and a large chain of cameras that are in places that you may not be aware of. So you think you get away with stealing something in one location. By the time you get to wherever your hideout is or what have you, they already know who you are. They know where the car was taken from. They've got you on video stealing the car. They've got you in possession of other items that you may have picked up along the way. They basically are tracking your entire day from the time that you put your feet down on the ground to the time you decide to commit the actual crime that you eventually got caught for. And that wraps into the whole thing of the Orwellian surveillance state, where even if you're not doing anything wrong, anything illegal, you're still being monitored. And yes, there are provisions that state these companies can't keep this information past 30 days unless it's being used actively for an investigation. But the problem that I see and many other people see with it is memory storage and cloud storage have gotten so robust that yes, in the good old days where you had a physical DVD or a physical VHS, you could only keep so much information on those items. And then you could only stack up and store so many of those things in one location. Now that memory sticks are available on many cases to be 1 terabyte, you can have a small portable hard drive that's, no bigger than a deck of cards, and it's 10 terabytes. If you have a cloud storage system, the advantage of the cloud storage system is you can put information anywhere. You don't have to label it information that's supposed to be disposed of after 30 days according to law. You can put that into any title that you want, break up that information, and only effectively the IT person and the supervisor, manager, or whoever else it is said, go ahead, hide this information over there are going to actually know what it's for. It would take a deep dive of forensic investigation to find that information out. So the idea that you're being told that, oh, this information is not being kept in the database past this amount of time could be completely false. And with the advent, especially the advancements of AI, moving and accelerating things, a lot of what we know with the artificial intelligence that is still being worked on, and a lot of it that's out that we're not aware of, it's all about programming and training through subsets of database. Well, all of our information, how we look, how we walk, how we interact, how you drive, how you park, when you're in a shopping aisle, what your physical behavior is when other people come into the aisle versus when you're by yourself, all those little things that you don't think about build into that AI's learning database, and it begins to accumulate and acquire all of that. No company's going to delete that, because effectively speaking, that's basically putting it back down to zero, because it has to relearn that. So it stays in that internal database, and it becomes information that becomes part of the learning process, enabling those new AI programs to adapt faster, to become more readily available to predict the next step, which in many cases you will have at a certain point. When you start to see retail stores, as an example, Walmart, they have cameras everywhere for security, for theft. They have cameras at the registers for two primary reasons: to see if the employee is stealing, or to see if a customer is stealing. Maybe they forgot something under their cart. Maybe they hid something under their cart. The self-checkout has cameras set up above and facing effectively the cashier screen, as it were, to see you, to see what your hands are doing, to see inside your bag, your cart, everything else like that. All those things coordinate. Now, if you add that into an AI system that now understands the behaviors of certain actions humans do when they're stealing, that understands that if there's a non-discussed coordinated effort between a customer and a cashier that on the surface look to be just that, but behind the scenes, that's actually their next door neighbor's aunt or something, and they've already worked out a deal for exchanging one item in return for another item, the machine, the software is going to pick up on that. It's going to pick up on those cues, but it's also still connected to the register, and it's going to pick up on the transactions. So before the floor manager is even aware, before the loss prevention agent is even aware, the software has already determined that employee, that customer, they're doing a fraudulent exchange. They're doing a false return. Things out on the street, the same thing. It'll pick up on body behavior where you and your buddies are just hanging out, having a fine time talking and everything. It may start to pick up on small, subtle cues from within your group and start focusing on that. And maybe not, someone is going to take an action that could be considered illegal, or at the minimum cautionary, in the environment that they're in. It may not be anything, but then a police officer gets a notification, not from dispatch, but from the effective AI system saying patrol and observe this particular area. Cops start showing up, and it may be a simple case of, they've had robberies, or they've had assaults, or they've had disturbing the peace issues, but now here come the cops, and they come rolling up to put eyes on the scene to see what's going on. They may see it as nothing but a bunch of guys hanging out, or they may see it as, I got 3 hours before my shift ends. I don't want anything to start. Hey guys, break it up. You're not supposed to be hanging out here. Let's move along. Have a nice day. All depends upon the situation. And yes, to one extent, you could still say that's more extreme, but then take 20 minutes out of your day and just scroll through different news cycles, especially local news cycles, and you start to see those small little non-connected dots start to connect. Little incidents here and there that show that wasn't just dumb human luck. That wasn't high-end skill and investigative reasoning. That was the AI system connected to all the different cameras, sending out the notifications, following and seeing and observing the pattern, because that's a key thing in the programming of these AI systems. They are great at pattern recognition. They are far faster at it, and they retain it a lot more. They don't have to think back to that time when they were in whatever period. They automatically pull that information up, compare it to what's actively being shown, and then run a percentage, because that's what it's based off of, run a percentage of what the outcome is going to be or what the next action will be. So let me know what you discover in the comment section, what you've already noticed, and put that in the comment section. When you're driving around, going to work, grocery shopping, going to a friend's house, whatever it is, do you start to notice more cameras, or are there cameras that were up that you just didn't pay attention to? And if you do see them, where are they located in relation to the area? Are they traffic cameras where they're pointed at the intersection, or are they traffic cameras that seem to be pointed up towards a particular area off the road or by a building? If you go into a public available building, especially a state or a federal building, security cameras on the outside to be expected, but also how many other cameras are around the perimeter that don't belong to that government agency? How many cameras are watching people up and down the street before they even get close to the building, let alone when they get into the building itself? On your own roads, your private roads, you got to think about your house, your neighbor's house. How many people have outside security cameras? How many people have Ring doorbell systems that, while yes, again, they may be paying for the service so that way they can get notifications and record all the video when there is something, but the service provider still retains the rights to that information. So even if they only get an alert or they have to manually check on their phone or on their tablet to see what's going on, that provider has every single second, every single day, every single sound that is made that those cameras pick up, and it records it into the database. Now, what it does with it, again, leads into the aspect that it can use that to train new AI programs, improve software. It can put that into a collective pool that could allow law enforcement, when they're just trying to get an idea of what's going on in a neighborhood, start viewing Ring footage and Blink camera footage from that neighborhood to see, is there an increase in people loitering? Is there an increase in people out just wandering about? Is there an increase in, neighborhoods moving and shifting from one level to another level that could be more related to the type of crime that might be going on and what they can do to get ahead of it? And of course, as I said before, in a situation where the government wants to maintain control, being able to see and hear and understand what you're doing without you realizing it would be one of those key ways. If they can watch you come out of your house from your neighbor's camera, if they can have a traffic cam that's looking down your street and they can see when all of you start to gather at the corner to talk about the lockdowns and the barricades and the curfews, they can get an idea that perhaps based upon the body behavior and mechanics, that there's a little discussion going on that maybe needs to be broken up. And that's not even counting what is available with drones, where you can have a UAV drone, whether it be a large jet-sized one that's circling around at 15,000 feet from 3 miles out that you don't even hear, or whether it's a small manned FPV drone that, a patrolling officer or soldier pops up in the air 3 blocks away and starts doing checks and sweeps over every single block as it flies around, looking for exactly that, groups and clusters of people gathering where they shouldn't be gathering. Well, that's it for now. I'll catch you in the next one.